In video editing groups I'm in on social media and such, one of the most common threads that get started is concerning poor playback of the video editing software, whether it's Premiere, Resolve, whatever. And 99% of the time, that is because the person who is relatively new is trying to edit high resolution video. Normally, no matter how fast computers are, editors typically work with what's called proxy media, which is lower resolution media and in some cases even lower bit rate. The editing software can play back this media a lot easier. It's a lot easier on the system, takes a lot less resources, much better performing. Now, creating proxy media is an extra step in the process before you start editing the video. A lot of applications, like I use Resolve, have an option to create the proxy media for you. You select your media, right-click on it. From the menu that pops up, you select Create Proxy Media, and then it starts rendering. Now, rendering can take a while. Now, this is an extra process. This will add more time. And if you're in a hurry, like you're trying to keep up with social media and you're just trying to shoot, edit, and upload as fast as possible, this can slow you down. This can be a little bit of a hiccup. And so a lot of people will skip it. They just say, screw it, I'll just work through it. I just need to get this footage cut and upload it as soon as possible. Now, if you're working with GoPros, I got some news for you. You have low resolution video files to work with. When you download off a GoPro, you'll usually have one or more folders called something like 100 GoPro, 101 GoPro, 102 GoPro, so on. This is an actual folder from a vlog shoot I did a while back. And when we open it up, we have all these files in here. Let me go to extra large icons. We have LRV files, which my computer doesn't recognize. We have the high resolution video, right? Let's drag this one down here. Look at the codec. It is 5K, 60 FPS. We have some other media files right here. These are the raw WAV files. You may or may not have these depending on your GoPro settings. I usually enable raw audio. And then you have these THM files. So let's look at these THM and LRV files. I'm going to copy a couple of these and go up a directory. Now, I've had people try to tell me that these are proprietary formats that only GoPro can read. Okay. Well, I don't buy that one bit. Let's start with the THM file. That's really tiny, 5.51 kilobytes. What if I just rename the extension? Because if you know anything about computers, extensions are bullshit, right? A file can have any extension. Now, that may mean the default application won't be recognized for that file type. So if you try to click on it, it won't open anything. Like if I click on this, Windows is going to be like, what? What is this? All right. But that doesn't always mean what you think it means. Let's rename this to JPEG. Yes, I want to change it. What do we got here? We got a little tiny picture, like a thumbnail. Well, THM is short for thumbnails. These are the little thumbnails that appear on your GoPro. When you're looking at that GoPro screen, you see the little tiny thumbnails of your videos. That's what you're seeing right there. Now, what about these right here, these LRV files? Well, LRV stands for low resolution video. And I've had people try to tell me that GoPro has its super secret proprietary codec that nothing else can read. Why on earth would they ever sink time in that for low resolution video? That makes no sense. So let's drag and drop the LRV file right into VLC Player. I'm not going to change the extension. Let's just see what happens. Holy cow, video. Who would have thought? Let's check out the codec really quickly. Oh my goodness, it's only H.264, 768 by 432, 60 FPS. That's a great size for proxy media. So for fun, if we change this to MP4, yep, and there we go, we have a preview. Voila, we have video. So in a lot of video editing applications, you have your folder of your high-res footage. And when you get started, you want to link that to some proxy footage. So usually what the application like DaVinci Resolve that I use will do is you'll open up a dialog and have you point to a different folder that has a proxy footage. And as long as the proxy footage is the exact same name, it'll link all the media. If it's not the exact same name, it's going to have some problems. Now, you can individually usually link one movie file to its proxy directly if that proxy doesn't have the exact same name. But if you're trying to do it in a batch, the files have to have matching names. All right, so let's jump in and scroll the bottom and find the high resolution version right here, 33177. But did you notice something? The names still don't match exactly. That's because the prefix, look at, this is GX, GX033177. The proxies, the LRV files, all start with GL. So we need these files to not only have their extensions changed, but we have to change the prefix, specifically the second letter. We have to change that from L to X. So doing all this in Windows Explorer, one file at a time, is maddening. However, I'm going to show you how to write some batch scripts to automate the whole process. We're going to start with Windows. I'm in Windows right now. That's the main OS that I use. So I'm going to blow away these two files. We don't need them anymore. Those are just examples. The editor that I'm using is Visual Studio Code. It's a free editor. So if you don't have an editor picked out, you're really new to this, I'll leave links in the description. You can also get it from the App Store. So I got the App Store right here. So yeah, you can just look it up in the App Store, download it there too, and it will work just fine. With your editor open up, we're going to do a new file. Now, if you have a different editor, it's going to look a little bit different right here, but if you have VS Code, you can follow this part along. Do select a language and type in batch. Now let's save the file. I'm going to call this GP, short for GoPro, -sort-media. And if you're using a different application, that's fine. Just make sure that the file type is going to be batch, which means the extension is going to be .bat, and we're going to save it. So, all right, there it is. If you're Windows savvy, you're probably questioning why I'm not using PowerShell, which is a newer terminal. It's more powerful, hence the name PowerShell. Has a lot more commands. Well, there's a good reason for that. So I'm going to create a new file, and you don't have to do this part. And I'm going to change it to PowerShell, and just give some hash marks, save it out, and call it example. All right, so here's the script that we were working on, the first one we made, and the example script. The workflow that I intend with this script is to be drag and drop. I would like a user to be able to take the folder full of media and just drag and drop it onto the script and have it run. I don't want people to have to open up a command line or terminal and start typing in commands. Now you see when I drag it over the script highlights and a little annotation says, open with GP sort media. Cool, that tells me I can do a drag and drop operation. But what about the PowerShell script right here? It doesn't highlight at all. I looked into this. This is a well-known issue. Like, it's just not something they enabled by default. And they, I mean Microsoft. I did read stuff online, people saying you had to modify this, change that, and do a bunch of other probably hacky stuff. That one, it goes way outside the scope of this video that I want to cover. Two, I don't like telling users that you have to go in like your registry edit or your low-level settings and start changing things when they don't understand what they're changing. All right, you don't know me. You shouldn't trust me when I say go in your registry editor and change this, change that. You need to be really, really careful of those things. So that is something I don't want to introduce to you all. So we are not going to do PowerShell. And close that file out. Okay. So when we drag and drop the folder, we want the script to be able to go inside the folder and then run all the commands. And we're going to do that using the CD command. We're going to say CD, which is short for change directory, and then tell it %1. This is probably where you're confused. You're like, what is %1? This is the argument variable. Confused? Okay, makes sense. Let's do this. Echo. So it's like a print statement. This is going to be a verbose feedback. %1. Okay. Let's drag and drop the folder onto the script. And you probably saw that little flicker for a second. Well, that means it ran the command I told it to, then it closed out immediately. So with batch scripts, I usually like to have this pause at the very end of the script. I like to have it sit open so I can see any kind of verbose feedback that the script is probably giving me. All right, save it, run it again. There we go. This time it stayed open. Let's have a look at it. First line is the command, the echo command. And it's saying %1 is holding this value, which is the full path to the folder that we dragged and dropped. And then this is the output of the echo command. Well, this seems kind of redundant right here, doesn't it? Like it's showing me the command, then the output of the command, and that's showing me the pause command. Yeah, Windows batch scripts are by default noisy. All right, they're very noisy. This will always come up. When you use the pause command, you'll always see this part here. Press any key to continue. This is the result of the pause command. So I'm just going to hit any key on my keyboard and close it out. So something that I typically do in all Windows batch scripts, the very first line, do at echo off. Now when I drag and drop, all right, a lot less verbose, it's echoing the folder name. And then press any key to continue. We already know about that. Okay, so let's talk about this %1. When you're running shell scripts, doesn't matter the language, right? It could be on Mac, which will be on Mac later, or Windows. Each of the little parameters that gets passed through is what's called an argument. And they all have a position in order that they come through at. Now, so they're a list, right? They're an array. Well, in programming languages, arrays almost always, I've worked with one that doesn't, start at 0. So there is a language out there, one that I've worked with that starts at 1, but normally they all start at 0. And so if we do echo %0, okay, so we're going to print two things. We're going to print the very first value in that argument array and then the second value. And you're thinking, how's there two values? That doesn't make sense. Well, watch this. Take the folder, drag it back on the script again. All right, so what we see is the first argument, and this will hold true too if you do this on the Mac, right? The first argument is always going to be the name of the script that's being run. Then the second argument is the folder that we dragged and dropped onto that script. If we added an echo statement for the third index, which would be number 2, remember that we start at 0 with arrays. Well, there's nothing going on here. There's only the folder, so this would be empty. However, if I was to say, new folder, call it foo, right? And I'm going to take both these folders and drop it onto the script. Whoops, I forgot to save. All right, let's try that again. Take both folders and drop it onto the script. So we see the script for the first argument, the GoPro folder for the second, and that new foo folder I just created as the third. Now, unfortunately, I'm going to try to keep this tutorial pretty simple. So we're not going to support an arbitrary number of media folders. So if you're going to use this, like you're watching this video a year from now and you have the script and you have several of these GoPro folders, 100 GoPro, 101 GoPro, so on, you're going to have to do one at a time onto the script. Maybe in a later video, I can walk you through doing a modified version that would loop through each of the arguments and process each folder. That is possible, but that is going to be outside of the scope of this video. So for now, we're just going to delete it, and we're going to focus on one folder at a time. So let's delete these echo statements and do cd. So to reiterate, change directory %1 will mean the script will go inside the folder and then execute all the following commands within this folder. Now, the first thing we want to do is move all the high-res videos to a folder. So each file type is going to get its own folder. That's part of the purpose of the script, is organizing all those files. So we're going to make an echo statement here. And this is just an arbitrary piece of text. I'm going to say moving the high resolution media. Okay. So it's just going to print this. And this is totally arbitrary. You can say, you can remove this whole thing and just say Twilight is an amazing series. You're free to do that. I will seriously wonder about you as a human being, but I just want to demonstrate it is totally arbitrary. You can put any kind of message you want after the echo statement or the echo command. All right. Now what we want to do is make a directory, and that is done with the make dir command, which is short for make directory. I'm going to say make dir high res. All right. I'm going to drag and drop. Okay. And let's jump in the folder. Set this back to large icons. And it created a high res folder. All right. There's nothing inside of it because we haven't moved the media yet. So let's go ahead and just delete that. For me, what's a good practice is to make sure a folder doesn't exist before creating it. So what we're going to do is create an if statement. We're going to say if not exists high res, then we'll create some opening and closing parentheses and move that make dir command inside of there. Okay. I'm going to drag the folder over and run it. Now you notice the terminal popped open for a second and closed immediately, just like it did before we added the pause command. That is because there's a syntax error in here, and I did it intentionally. I know exactly what's wrong. But this is an example of why I encourage people to always have this pause command at the end of the script, because if it works right, the script doesn't error, right, your window should sit open. But if there's an error somewhere, the window is going to close prematurely. And so that's kind of an indication for you that something is wrong. I already know what the problem is. I put exists. It should be exist. If not exist, high res, make the directory high res. Okay? And then we're going to move all the existing high res video files to that directory. So we're going to say asterisk, this is a wildcard, which is going to grab all the MP4 files and move them to high res, just like this. So again, if high res folder doesn't exist, create it, move all the MP4 files to the high res folder. That simple. All right. Run this. Tells me 14 files moved. This feedback is generated automatically by the commands. Even if we have that echo off, some commands will still give you some feedback no matter what. All right, we jump in here. We go in here. Here's the high-res videos on the high-res folder. This is already looking better. It's a little more organization, and this is a smarter way to work. Okay, so I'm going to move them out and delete the high-res. Let's head back up to the top. All right, the next thing we're going to do is take care of the WAV files. Now, this section is optional. If you have enabled raw audio for your GoPro, you could leave this block out. Say moving audio files. And then to make things easier, I'm just going to copy and paste. I want to change this to be WAV. So if a WAV folder doesn't exist, create a folder called WAV. You can call this audio too if you wanted. And we want to move all WAV files to the WAV folder. Next up is the thumbnails. Now granted, the thumbnails are too small in my opinion to be really usable for anything, but I still don't want the files just floating around at the root directory. this is a cleanup process for me. Now you could do something like this. You could say delete *.thm. All right, this will, oops, THM. This would delete all the thumbnail files. I personally, because I have been burned in the past, I am very cautious about any automated process deleting files. I prefer to do that part manually. So what I'm going to do is actually just move all the thumbnail files to a folder. And then I would sometimes just delete them manually later on. But normally I don't really worry about it. They're small in file size and doesn't take up much room. But you could do this. I'm not going to leave this part in the script, especially for like a new user tutorial. I really try to discourage new users, people who are learning scripting, from deleting files in automation. So you can do it, but I'm going to go on a record and discourage you from it. But since we're working with the thumbnails, let's make the files usable anyways. So we're going to say renaming thumbnails *THM. Why do I keep doing that? THM and moving. So what I'm going to do is create a thumb directory. All right, just like this. And this gives me a good excuse to show you how to batch rename file extensions in the command prompt. So we're going to do rename. That's the name of the command. Rename *THM. So all the thumbnail files, I'm going to rename those to *JPEG. That's it. This will do a batch rename on all the extensions. And then we can do move *JPEG to thumb, just like this. Let's go over it one more time. If not exists thumbnail, we're going to make the directory thumbnail. We've done this twice before. We're going to rename anything with the extension THM to JPEG, and then move all JPEG files to the thumb directory. And that's it. And this is how I actually use the script. I don't delete my thumbnails. I just get them out of the way. All right. Lastly is the low resolution video files, our proxies. So comment here is renaming low resolution *LRV video files and moving. Copy this. I'm going to call this folder proxy. And it should be obvious, but I'll just state it anyways. You can use any name you want for these folders. This is what I use. Work any way you want. It's up to you. I'm not going to dictate your pipeline. We're going to use the rename command again. However, okay, let's say -LRV. So we're getting all the LRV files, but we're not going to say *MP4 because if you remember, we have to change the prefix. So just to cover it again, all the low-res video files start with GL. All the high-res video files start with GX. So we need to change out that prefix. Actually, we need to change the second character. We need to change L to X. All right, so how do you isolate a single character? That's actually pretty easy. All right. So we're going to do that with the question mark operator. So I'm going to put in a question mark. This is for the letter G. Since they both start with G, we want to preserve that letter. The second one we want to change that to an X. So put an X here for the second character. And the naming convention in GoPro Media is going to be 6 numbers. So do 6 question marks. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. All right. Just like that. This will change only one character in the file name, and of course the extension right here. So if we had GL 001122.LRV and the rename command picks it up, it's going to see a question mark for the first character, the G, so it's going to preserve the G. Right? We could actually, in theory, this would do the exact same thing. Okay? I could put that and have the exact same effect. But I want to make it very clear I'm only changing one character. All right. So it's going to see this question mark, so it's going to keep the letter G. Then it's going to get to the second character, the X right here, and it's going to swap out the L for the X, so we're going to get this. And then it will see that the remaining characters are all question marks, so it's going to preserve the 001122 and then give it the .mp4 and come out like this. All right, just like that. And then after we have renamed everything, we can say move *.mp4 to proxy. And I'm going to copy and paste. And that should be it. Let's run the script. And if I didn't screw it up anywhere, all right, that's the feedback I get. And if we go into the folder, we see we have 4 folders now, 4 subdirectories: high res, proxy, thumb, and wave. Here's all the wave files. All right. There's all the little thumbnails. Again, I never really use these. I will normally actually just leave it there till the project's done, and then just when I'm deleting everything, cleaning it up, then I worry about getting rid of them. I mean, the whole folder on this is taking up 77.3 kilobytes. So I'm not really worried about it, but I did show you how you can use the delete command if you choose to live so dangerously. And then the proxy right here. Naming conventions match, GX, GX, GX. They're MP4s, right? Everything works. There's the high res. Didn't have to rename it, change anything, just change what folder the high res files are in. And that wraps up the Windows part of this tutorial. Next, we're going to jump over to the Mac and show Apple users what they can do. All right, here we are on the Mac. Now, someone's going to ask me, why'd you do the first part of the video in Windows? When you edit video, aren't you supposed to be on a Mac? No, you're not. I've actually worked on a lot of productions. The editorial was running on Windows. I don't know what this obsession is with people. Like, they decide they want to get into video editing and creating films, which is cool, right? Be creative. They want to do something creative. You know, painting, editing, filmmaking, whatever. And one of the first things they do is they run out, they dump $6,000 on a new Mac Pro. You don't need to. Maybe you do need a computer upgrade, possibly if you have a really old computer, but you don't need to get a Mac to get into video editing, okay? Or programming. So, all right, well, anyways, here we are, and let's get started in Mac. We're going to create a script. It's going to be in a different language. It's going to be shell script. So the first line to make a script something you can run is to give it what we call a shebang line or a hashbang line. And how the terminal would understand which language you're using is through the first line in the script. It's called the hashbang or shebang line. So we start by giving it a hash and an exclamation point. Now you want to define what the shell is. The best way to know where to go with this is do echo $shell bin ZSH. Yeah, so if you're on a newer Mac, it's going to be most likely the ZSH shell. So I'm going to copy this and let's save the script. Just like before, we'll call it GP sort media. And the extension should be .sh, which is short for shell. Hit save. I'm going to go into that folder. So I see my shell script right there. We're going to run this script inside the folder. Well, we have to tell the script to go inside the folder. And we're going to do that with the cd command, change directory. That's what it's short for, CD. All right, and we're going to say $1. You're probably pretty confused by this, but if you were tuning into the Windows part of this tutorial, then this is probably looking very familiar. Remember, in the Windows one, we were doing CD %1. Well, percent doesn't work, or works differently in the terminal. Instead, we use the $sign, but it's still 1. If you did not catch that part, well, I'll go over it really quickly with you. This is looking for an argument to the script, and the best way to demonstrate that is to do the echo command $1. All right. Now let's come down here, and we're going to run the script. First, though, the script needs to be executable. Okay. If we look at the info, and we go down here to sharing and permissions, you see that it says read and write. That means it can't be executed. All right. We need this to be executable. So if I tried to execute on this, all right, if I go in here and I try to tab complete the name of the script, I'm going to do /. So // is the syntax you use if you want to run a script in the directory that you're in right now. So if I did ls, we see that script right here, right? And I'm doing /gp, and I'm going to hit tab. And it should tab complete the name, but it's not happening. Well, the reason is because of the permissions. They are read and write, they're not execute. So I'm going to do chmod +x gp sort media. And now if I type and I hit tab, it auto completes. Okay, that's progress. So let's run the script. And you see that we're not getting any feedback. Well, that is because we did not give it an argument. So if I run the script again, say gp sort media 100 GoPro, we see 100 GoPro. If you're curious what these numbers do, so if I did echo 0, $1, and let's do $2 for fun, and I run it again, you see the first line is the name of the script. So the first argument will always be the name of the script that is running. The arguments are an array, they're a list, okay? And lists in programming languages start at 0 for the index. So 0 is the name of the script. I rarely ever have to use that. 1 is the folder 100 GoPro, okay? And we did echo 2, it printed nothing. It just failed quietly, and that's how these terminals are. But if I did this, I'm going to hit the up arrow, bring back the last command that I typed. I'm going to type foo. Okay, I don't have a folder in there, but I'm just going to type in the word foo. And then we see it's the name of the script, the folder, and then this arbitrary value I put in called foo. These are the arguments. This is how you pass the arguments through. This is how you collect them inside the script. All right. Deleting all those echo commands, let's put in CD for change directory $1. We're going to go inside the directory. All right. We're going to make the folder. I'm going to say make dir high res. Now, if that folder already existed, this would throw an error. A shorthand thing you can do is -p. -p is really handy if I wanted to create a folder and subfolders. So if I had folders I was creating, I said high res, and then a folder underneath it called foo. Okay. If I try to do this, it would error out because make dir will only do one tier. It'll only do one level. If I do -p, not only will it make subdirectories of the directory you're creating, but it will only create directories that exist. So this is a very shorthand way of doing if directory doesn't exist, create it. Just simply like this, make dir -p high res. Similar to in Windows, we're going to use the move command, but in Mac, it's not the word move, it's just the letters MV. All right. And similar syntax, *.mp4 high res. So we're making a folder called high res if it doesn't exist, and moving all MP4 files to that folder. And let's just test it out for fun. All right. And let's go in here. Scroll down here. There's the high res. There we go. All right. If you're generating raw audio files like I am, you'll want to create a directory for your WAV files. Now you can call it WAV, audio, whatever you want. It's completely up to you. I am going with WAV. That's how I work. But I'm not going to tell you how to work. So that will handle my WAV files. Now let's take care of the thumbnail files. This is going to be a little bit different. All right. First, we're going to do make dir-p thumb directory. And as I covered in the Windows part of this, you could do remove. RM is remove. Windows, it was del for delete. So Mac, it's going to be rm. THM. All right. Like I explained in the Windows part of this tutorial, I don't try to encourage people to use deletions in automated scripts unless you have really tested it and you really know what you're doing. Because otherwise you can really screw yourself. Not saying that I've done it, which I have. All right. Make directory called thumb. Now what we have to do is rename the thumbnails. This is going to be a little bit different of a process than it was in Windows. We're going to create a for loop. So I'm going to say for THM. THM is a variable name we're going to use in a little bit. In *.thm, THM, do. All right. I'm just going to go down here for a line and type in the word done. So right here between this line and this line is the scope of the for loop. So it's saying for each file that matches THM, and each file name will be stored in this variable lowercase thm. We're going to generate the new name, and that is done with a little command line syntax shenanigans. So if we have a thumbnail, I'm going to create the variable right here in the command line. Just test this real time so you can see it. Called gx001122.thm. Okay. Echo THM. See, that's our variable. There's an interesting syntax you can do in the shell. We're going to make these opening and closing quotes. Do the $, THM. Put it within these curly brackets, just like this. And I'll do it again up in the editor part. I just want to show you real time what it's going to look like. And then type in, right after the M and before the closing curly bracket, %.thm, and then outside the curly bracket, type in the JPEG extension. Now if I run this, you see what the output is. Okay. It created a new string, hasn't changed anything. No files have been changed yet. It just created the string, the word, that later we will rename the file to with the new extension. That's what the syntax does. It says anything after this percentage, which is going to be the extension, is going to be replaced with the string that's outside of this curly bracket. All right, so if I don't know, typed in blah, right, it would be dot blah, and so on. So anyways, this is what we want right here. I'm going to take this value. So we're going to create this new string variable right here called new name. And then we're going to move and put in open and closing parentheses. It's a good practice to do that. THM, so whatever file name is stored in this variable on each iteration of the loop, and rename it to $new name. And then when all is said and done, move *.jpg to the thumbnail directory, just like that. And just like in the Windows part of this tutorial, I thought I would save the proxies for last because there's a bit more work to do here. So I'm going to say make dir p proxy. We are making the proxy directory if it does not exist. Okay. Now I'm saying for each LRV file in *.lrv do, I want to close the loop just like this, okay? Again, we're going to create the new name, and it's going to be similar to what we did up here. So I'm just going to copy this. So we're getting the LRV, and we're going to replace THM with LRV and JPEG with MP4. Right, so this is very similar to what we did before. All right, just like before, let's walk through the logic in the terminal. Let's say LRV, create a dummy name to test with, 001122.lrv. All right. And then we know that if we take this right here, do echo, that we're changing the extension name, okay? So that part is easy. Let's go ahead and just copy this line down here. Verify, echo new name. All right, so we're halfway there. We have the new extension. Now we have to cut out this prefix and swap it out with GX, because the low-res videos start with a GL and the high-res videos start with GX. And when you're doing a batch linking of a folder of high-res videos to a folder full of proxy videos, normally applications expect the base name, at the very least, to match. I think some have options where they don't require the extensions to match. I think Premiere did that. But usually, if you want to do a batch linking, the file names have to match. So we're halfway there. We have the extension, but we need to swap out GL with GX so it matches the high-res names, right? So here's all the LRV files. Start with GL. Here's the high-res video. They all start with GX. So this is going to take a little more work. All right. Let me show you how we're going to cut the first two letters out of the name. I'm going to do echo, new name. All right, and then I'm going to do the pipe character. So I'm saying redirect that output of one command to another command. In this case, the echo command. We're going to direct the echo output to the cut command. And I'm going to say cut -C3 dash. Probably doesn't make a lot of sense, but watch this. Look at that. It stripped off the first two characters. Okay. So if we took this and we wrap this in quotes and parentheses like this. So you do quote at the beginning, the $sign. What this will do is this will execute a command within a string and allow us to concatenate it with another string. Concatenate there. I'm tripping over my words today. So anyways, I'm going to do echo GX, right? So this is what we want to add to the front. And this is going to strip out the first two letters and insert them behind the letters GX. So if I did this, we see it is GX 001122 MP4. And just for fun, just to hammer it home, blah, right? It doesn't have to be the same length of letters. Once I have stripped out those first two letters, I can add anything I want to the front. So that's pretty cool. So anyways, we're going to use this. We're going to grab this right here, copy it, and totally going to override that variable with the new value. So if I did this, copy, I'd love to verify my output, and then did echo new name GX001122.mp4. Perfect. Now we can do move $LRV $new name, just like that. All right, so the loop is done, and we're creating the directory. For each LRV file we find, each one on each iteration is going to be stored in this variable. We're going to first rename the extension. Then, using this funky little syntax right here, we're going to cut off the first two letters and replace them with GX. And then, using the move command, rename the LRV file to the new name, which will match its high-res equivalent. And the last thing we have to do is move *.mp4 to proxy. All right, so let's go GP sort media, 100 GoPro, and let's see what happens. All right, we see the proxy, thumb, wave. Where on earth is my high-res? Ah, yes, because I'm not sorting. Okay, sort by name. There we go. There's my high-res media right there. So we got the high-res. We got our proxies. You see they have the GX prefix and the .mp4 extension. Thumbnails, again, not very useful, and my wave files. All right, now here is where things are going to get a little bit different with Mac versus Windows. And in some ways, I think some of you might like it more. I know most users don't want to use command line, right? Normally, you'd be using the terminal if you were like me and typing your commands in there. I've been using the terminal for years, so it doesn't faze me. But that's not everyone's cup of tea. But let me show you what you can do to actually give this an interface. All right, so with that closed out, I'm going to keep the code open because it's going to be relevant. I'm going to type command spacebar, type in the word automator. Show of hands, how many of you have used this built-in tool in the Mac before? Be honest. All right. So hit enter. And you're probably going to get a dialog like this. Just hit new document. And for the type of document, choose application. And up here in the little search field, type in the word shell. Say run shell script. We're going to take the code we just wrote and dump it into there. Let's go ahead and copy all of this. Copy, paste, expand this a bit. Now you see right here it says shell bin zsh. It already knows what to run the shell in, so we can actually remove that first line. We do have to change a little bit of syntax though. We need to change this cd command. I'm going to type it in here so you can see it a little bit better. We need it to say cd, do opening and closing parentheses, $@ at. All right. So let's just copy this, go in here, paste it, and for pass input, do as arguments. All right. Now we're going to save it. You can put this anywhere actually. This is going to be a little app. We're going to be creating an actual app that you can just put on your computer and share between your other Macs if you want to. For fun, I'm going to put it on the desktop and stick to the same naming convention of GP sort media. Hit save. All right, so with that done, let's go ahead. I'm just going to move this out of the way and minimize my code editor here. And you see on my desktop, I got this little icon, GP sort media. Now you can actually drag and drop onto that app. And there it is. Now that works for drag and drop, okay? You can actually take this a step further. All right, let's go back into here. And I'm just gonna kind of get this up and out of the way. I'm gonna type the word finder, and I think I want this right here, ask for finder items. I think this is it right here. Let me check. Yes, this is the feature we want. You want ask for finder items. We do want to take this and drag it above, and we can change the prompt name. So we're going to give this a little bit of a UI instead. Instead, you can have a file dialog to select the folder. So we're going to say choose a folder with GoPro Media. You can choose your start directory. For some reason, artists love working off the desktop. But if you're a little more organized, you probably have a staging directory that you want to point this to by default. Type is folders only. Now let's go ahead and save, which will update the app. Now when you run this, all right, it's going to default to the desktop because that's where we left it. But I did point out you can change that. I'm going to browse to my GoPro media. Just click on the folder and hit choose. Let's actually, just to show you I have reset the files, hit choose, and there it goes, just like that. There might be some other features in here you could use. I don't know. I'm trying to keep this simple, just kind of introduce you to Automator. But that is how you would go about making your script a little more intuitive so you don't have to access it from the command line. I finally finished this. It took me a long time, longer than I would have liked. Yes, there is a lot more that could be covered. I'm sure those of you out there who have programming experience are up in arms about all these things I didn't do, all these conditions I didn't test for, and all this and that. Yeah, believe me, I know all the things that could be done. This is a very, very basic entry-level tutorial, only to cover the basics, but do something that's practical, okay? I think a lot of us who came up in programming know about the, the Hello World tutorials, or just the cheap tutorials where you're just kind of arbitrarily changing variable data around, but it's nothing that's really practical, like managing the media off your GoPro. And there's a lot of GoPro users out there, and I guarantee a lot of them don't know, or even if they did know, they aren't doing it using their LRV files as proxy media because they don't have a good automated way to rename the files and organize the data. This is a practical workflow that I actually use, and I've been using for a long time. And I'm really grateful to finally have the opportunity to sit down and cover it all with you. Granted, it took me quite a while to get around to doing it, but here it is. It's done. And I hope you learn something from it. I will get these files uploaded somewhere so you can download them and check them out on your own. I hope you take your time to go through the video and watch everything. If you're having problems, honestly, just watch it over and over again. It's okay if it takes you 2, 3, 4 times to figure out if you're new. You're not dumb, okay? I'm not a smart person. I'm a high school dropout. And there are plenty of coding tutorials that I had to watch numerous times before I finally understood it. Hopefully this is simple enough where once or twice through, you get it. I appreciate your feedback, what you think of this, how easy it is to follow. There are scripts that I could do tutorials on that are much more difficult. Again, very practical, very media related, but they do get into harder topics. So I'm just trying to start very light here and just try to ease you all into it. All right, I'm going to wrap this up, get this video edited, and finally uploaded. So this was a great time. I really hope some of you out there find this useful. As always, thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you again next time.